All right. Thank you so much for rejoining us. Hope everyone enjoyed their break. Very excited about this next talk. We have some of the key team behind Tails and Tor that are going to come and talk to us about the need, the use cases, the need, and setting things up. Tony, can you pop up the intro card? We are kicking off with Sajolida. I worked very hard to make sure I tried to pronounce that as good as I can. Great. Who is the education coordinator with the Tor project, excuse me, the UX designer of the Tor project, working on Tails usability since 2011. And we have Raja, who's the education coordinator with the Tor project, who facilitates training for journalists, human rights defenders on Tor and Tails, and of course, now us. So there we go. Thank you very much for your time and eager to hear.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. So disclaimer, I'm very new to Zoom. So can you tell me if you can see the screen I'm sharing in my slides?
Yes, we can see it.
Excellent. Yeah. So yeah, thanks. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Chris, for the introduction. So as he said, I'm Sajolida, and I work for Tor. I've been working on Tails since 2011, doing UX design. And Raja is also here with us. So Raja, if you want to open your mic and say hi.
Hello, everyone. Very happy to be with you today. And thank you for welcoming us at this at Protectcon so we can tell you more about Tails and Tor.
Yes, yeah, totally agree with Raja. So at least at Tails, the people we usually target are journalists and activists, but it's also, but we've also thought about Tails as a tool that can be useful for domestic violence survivors. And so we got very excited when Chris contacted us because it's one of our target users that we have the most problems connecting with and learning from. So that's why, I don't know, we're particularly excited to be with you today. Yeah, so to continue this round of introduction, I think it might be interesting for us also to learn a bit more about yourself. And so I wanted to ask at least some of you to maybe tell us who you are and what you do, and why is digital self-defense important to you. Maybe these are things that you've discussed already as part of the conference. So I don't know. I don't want to force you to repeat yourselves too much. But maybe there are other things you are particularly interested in learning today from the talk. So yeah, I wanted to maybe hear from a couple of you.
So everybody, chat is enabled, and if you wanted to use voice, please feel free to raise your hand. But if you want to answer the question as far as what it is that you do and how this is relevant to you, please feel free to drop it in chat or raise your hand. We can enable audio for you. So I do see one that popped up, a Charlotta Camp Army Victim Advocate, which is a really important job, really important role. Can you see the chat?
Yes, I can see the chat.
Perfect.
Yeah. I'm reading all that. Yeah. And Tony, before the presentation started, you mentioned that maybe you've used Tails already in the past.
I'm sure he will jump in and answer, but I'll also answer that we often do use Tails if there's a need for survivors to contact resources or to search for tools and resources and information without getting caught. So it's something that is in some but not all of our solution sets.
Yeah, excellent.
I began using Tails soon after it was publicly available. I used to do direct advocacy work solo. Didn't know other organizations exist to do that kind of support. And Tails was part of that tool set every time.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. And I was seeing comments in the chat about understanding how abusers can use technology. And I think today we're gonna look at things not from the attacker point of view, as we would say in the security world, but more as a practice of self-defense, what kind of technology we can use for our own safety and our own self-defense, regardless of, I don't know, what other technologies the abusers and attackers can use against us. So yeah, I'm going to present what is Tails, and then we're going to also discuss, and I think that's the most interesting part, about the possible uses of Tails for you in your use cases. Yeah, a little of background information. Tails was created in 2009. We joined the Tor project in 2024, so very recently. So now we are part of Tor. Tor is a non-profit. It's a 501c3 for you in the US who know this jargon. It was founded in 2006. Right now, Tails has around 20,000 users each day. And everything we do at Tails and everything we do at Tor is funded by donations from users, public grants, and donations from private foundations and companies. So we are not selling anything. Everything we do is published as free software and is available for free from our websites. And the official website for Tails is tails.net, where you can find the download, more information about Tails, documentation, etc. Any questions regarding that? And if not, I will move forward. So Tails, we call Tails a portable operating system. So you install Tails on your USB stick, and it's an operating system that protects against surveillance and censorship. So to use Tails, what you do is you shut down your computer and then you start on the USB stick instead of starting on Windows, macOS, or Linux. So Tails is a full operating system with all the applications and utilities that you know from other operating systems like Windows or macOS, but it's installed on the USB stick instead of it being installed on the computer. That's something that people who've never seen this work in practice sometimes have a hard time grasping. And so if you don't mind, I will try to do a very short demo of starting Tails on a computer. So now you should be seeing a computer instead of me. And so just to illustrate my point, so it would be a computer running Windows. If I want to make it use Tails, I shut down Windows. It's a very old computer, so it's pretty slow, but so now the computer is shut down. There's no Windows running anymore. I put my Tails USB stick in the USB port. And then when I restart the computer, on most computers, you have to do some little trick for it to get started on the USB stick. On this computer, it's pressing F12. Depends on the computer. And we have instructions for different models on our website. So now I decide to start on the USB key. And I'm starting Tails. So this was just to illustrate that Tails really works independently of anything you have installed on the computer. It's not running inside Windows. It's running side by side with Windows, or instead of Windows, let's say. And I think that's it for the demo. I mean, I will wait for the welcome screen, but it's a pretty slow computer, so let's see how long it takes. It should take a minute or two. So I don't know if it's a kind of tool that you've been using in the past. This is the novel approach to security. Instead of trying to build security within Windows or within macOS, we isolate ourselves in an operating system that's totally independent. So now I can continue my slides. So we're saying that Tails allows you to have a secure computer anywhere. So in this case, you can temporarily turn your own computer into a secure machine. Instead of starting on Windows, you can start on Tails, and then you will have a more secure environment for everything you do. But you can also use your USB stick on other people's machine. So you can stay safe while using the computer of somebody else. For example, if you're traveling and you don't have your laptop, you borrow a laptop, you can start on your Tails USB stick and have your documents, have your applications without having to rely on the safety of the computer. Oh. Are there any questions so far on like this concept of starting on the USB stick and building a safe environment this way? Okay, so while I was talking, I think we're about to be on the welcome screen. Oops, yeah, no, welcome to Tails. And I can start Tails. Any questions on this concept? No. So another very important property of Tails is that it leaves no traces. So since you're not using Windows, you're using Tails from the USB stick. Whenever you start Tails, you start from the same clean state. And whenever you shut down Tails, everything you do disappears automatically. So for example, you can, yeah.
There was a question in chat when you prompted for a question.
I missed that. Yeah, I'm going back and forth between the slides and the chat.
I think Raya's fielding questions.
So the USB stick has to be 8 gigabytes, which is pretty much the minimum you can buy these days. But the thing is that you will only have Tails on this USB stick. So you need a dedicated USB stick only for Tails. And then, so on the USB stick, you will have Tails, the operating system, that will take, in this case, 4 gigabytes. And then you will have 4 gigabytes that will be free for you to store documents. And I will talk about this later on. I will switch back my camera. So, okay. Okay, where was I? Yeah, so that's something else. So on you can also create what we call a persistent storage. That would be a space that would be encrypted on the USB stick using the remaining space on the USB stick. So the OS will take 4 gigabytes if you have 8. And you will have 4 gigabytes free for your documents. And this persistent storage is encrypted on the USB stick. And there you can store your documents, your bookmarks, your emails, and even some additional software. So as I said earlier, everything you do in Tails disappears when you shut down. But you can decide what you want to save, and then you save it to this persistent storage. It's a bit the other way around. With traditional operating system, everything is saved, and you have tons of information about everything you are doing on the operating system that is saved on the hard disk forever, basically. And so with Tails, we take the opposite approach, where the user gets to decide what they want to save. And of course, since it's an operating system, we have a selection of applications that you can use to work on sensitive documents or communicate securely. So you only have to install Tails on the USB stick, and then when you start, all the applications are already ready to use, and they are configured with safe defaults that help prevent mistakes. So I put a couple of icons from applications that you can use in Tails. We have Thunderbird, which is an email client that maybe some of you know already. We have Tor browser, which is a browser to go on internet and avoid censorship and surveillance on the network. You have LibreOffice, which is an office suite with an equivalent of Word and Excel. You have a password manager, which is called KeePass. And you have another tool that's called Onion Share, which allows you to send and share files across the Tor network. So it's very important for us, this idea of a security toolbox. No, we do the work of selecting applications, configuring them so they are secure, and you don't have to install anything. You just start Tails, and you already have this secure toolbox available. Any questions so far? I will check the chat. So
Well,
no, unfortunately, Tails doesn't work with Apple chips, so M1, M2. It would be very complicated for us to get this to work, and also Apple is really not making things easy for developers like us to use their hardware to do other things than running macOS. So right now it's not possible, but we know that it's one of the biggest limitations for people to use Tails, especially in the US, where I think, I don't know, like maybe a quarter of the laptops are Mac or more. So right now, yeah, it runs on PC, let's say, and on some very old Mac hardware, but yeah. Yeah, so if you remove the USB stick while Tails is running, everything would shut down and everything would disappear. Work with a YubiKey, I don't know. And port to ARM processor, so M1 is a kind of ARM processor. So for us, it would be also like a huge project to be able to run Tails on Raspberry Pi, and the target users that we focus are really like laptop and desktop users, for them to have a secure environment outside of Windows, let's say. So no real plans to work on Raspberry Pi support. We would be more interested in having Tails work on Mac first. I will keep the questions on networking for later, because it's my next slide. So Tails uses the Tor network for everything. I don't know if you've heard about the Tor network. Raja could explain it much better than me, actually. But basically, Tor encrypts and anonymizes your connection by passing all your internet traffic through 3 relays. And so these relays are servers operated by different people and different organizations around the world. So instead of having only one intermediary, like it would be the case with a VPN, with Tor you have 3 intermediaries which are independent from each other, and that creates more resilience to surveillance and censorship. And so when you're using Tails, everything you do go through the Tor network. So that's the browser, emails, messaging, all the communication tools that you can use in Tails, they would go through the Tor network, whereas if you install Tor browser on your laptop, for example, you would only use Tor for web browsing. And so security properties of Tor to avoid surveillance and censorship. Tor prevents someone who is watching your internet connection from learning what you are doing on the internet. So if I'm your ISP and I look at your internet connection, I would only see that you are connecting to Tor, but I wouldn't know which website you are connecting to, or whether you are doing email or watching videos or anything. And that's how you can avoid censorship using Tor, because it's impossible for a censor to know which website you are visiting. So in this case, in the context of, I don't know, domestic violence, for example, that could be a way of avoiding parental control on the network. No, let's say your parents or your institution put limits on what you can watch online or what website you can watch online. Tor allows you to circumvent the censorship and connect to and visit anything on the internet. And as I said earlier, Tails is free. So we believe that nobody should have to pay to be safe while using a computer. And so that's why Tails is free software. We try to make it easy for anybody to use. You can download it on our website. And also all the code and all our software is public so that researchers can verify that Tails really works the way it should. Any questions? I will go back to the chat, see if there are more questions. Masking hardware identifiers. Yes, we are masking the MAC address of the Wi-Fi interface so that, I don't know, when you start Tails, the network doesn't know which Wi-Fi device you have is connecting to the network. Of course, Tails is not perfect, and for us as free software people, it's very important to be clear about the limitations because we're not selling anything. We're just here to help people, and so we want to be clear what they can do and what they cannot do with Tails. So as we said already, it doesn't work on Mac, on recent Mac with M1, M2 processors. Even on PC computer, if your PC is very new, you might have issues with the graphic cards. It works on most PC, but on like very new hardware, might not work, especially if you have like a fancy graphics card. People find it cumbersome to restart on Tails. Imagine you're a journalist and you're working on your, I don't know, whatever editing tools you have, and you want to restart on Tails to do some investigation. It might be cumbersome to switch between the two. But it's also like the core properties of the protection that Tails provides. Using Tor, of course, it's slower when you're using the internet. And some website block Tor. We know this, and we're trying hard to work on this and improve the situation, but it's a very complicated problem. And right now, in terms of applications and what you can do and cannot do in Tails, right now there are no options to do video calls in Tails. Zoom or Jitsi don't work. It's also something that we know we should really be working on. We have plans to work on this in the coming years, but we are not there yet. It's not possible right now. And the same for WhatsApp, Telegram, and Signal messaging application. It's one of our top priorities to work on this, on having at least Signal in Tails. But right now you can't use them. I think WhatsApp Web started working some months ago, and Telegram Web as well works sometimes. I don't think it's working right now. So these are some of the main limitations to using Tails as of today. And so going back to Andrea, VPN suggested while using Tails, no, because Tails already comes with everything ready to be using the Tor network, and the Tor network provide stronger privacy and anonymity compared to VPNs. So right now it's not possible. In the future, we might allow using VPN as an alternative to the Tor network for some applications on the web, like video calls. But it's not something that's possible right now. So another question, can Tails be set up so that it will not boot without the extra security of a concurrent YubiKey? I don't know. I've never used the YubiKey myself. Well, the persistent storage is protected with a password, a passphrase. And no, right now it's not possible to, I don't know, use a hardware key to also open it. And yes, the encryption of the persistent storage is using LUX. Yeah. Okay. No more questions. No, I have questions for you. So I'm very interested in hearing in your context of, I don't know, protecting domestic violence survivors. What do you think you could use Tails for in this context?
Once again, for those that don't want to use chat, just feel free to raise your hand at the bottom of your screen and we can enable your microphone. So I will chime in and say that in addition to the very good point that was brought up by Andrea and by Kat, one of the times that we will use it is when the survivor is in a contested environment. So if they need to use a shared computer that the abuser has access to, or they need to use a computer they're not entirely sure they can trust, while having the security built in, it's a pretty quick and easy way to do that. There is a user awareness piece. They have to know how to use it and know when to use it. But in some cases, of course, so for this domestic violence component, their threat model isn't necessarily nation state actors or even law enforcement or things like that. Well, naturally, those are all things that are kept in mind in any security solution. They're more worried about the physical access, the traces of what they're doing, things like that. So it's a very different model there. And Doug brings up a really good point that we deal with, is that changes can be bad. You know, if suddenly someone's starting to use a different operating system, or they have a USB drive with some code on it that the abuser doesn't recognize, it can raise questions. So that's always part of the discussion, is does this actually make things better or safer or less safe?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm reading everything in the chat. Very interesting comments. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, part of the security in that context is not to raise suspicion, no? I've heard about other lawyers that use Tails, people in the ACLU. So that's a new use case we can discuss as well. Okay. So thanks for sharing all that. I will go back to my slides and dig a bit deeper into these use cases. So yeah, the first one I have, compared at least to other security solutions, Tails is good to protect you from close surveillance. So you can use Tails to protect sensitive data from searches on your device. The example of this picture, it was published on Twitter back then. It's this woman who was crossing the US border. I don't know if you can see at the background of the photo. She was at the airport crossing the border, and she didn't want whatever border agent to have access to some of the data she was carrying along. So I don't know, you might be asked to open your laptop, but if you manage to conceal a USB stick, in this case, she managed to conceal the USB stick in her, I don't know, wristband. She was able to cross the border without being searched. And in the same way, you could use Tails to avoid the surveillance of people who are close to you. Let's say you're using the family laptop, but you want to do other things. You can restart on Tails, and when you shut down, everything you did disappears, no? And you don't leave trace of what you've been doing on the laptop. I think this slide really connects with many things you've said and you've shared in the chat. Another use case for Tails is to work on sensitive documents. So, for example, journalists who are working on revelations, leaks, and who are manipulating untrusted documents. In this case, the photos in the slides are from the documentary by Laura Poitras. It's called Citizen4. And you can see it's Edward Snowden playing with his Tails on his laptop in the hotel room in Hong Kong. And so Edward Snowden, when he copied the file from the NSA, and then he wanted to work with journalists to create a safe environment for them to be able to analyze the documents, communicate. They did everything from Tails. And so there was a way for them to work on these sensitive documents. I've also talked to journalists who use Tails to be able to open attachments or analyze things that they download from, I don't know, dark corners of the internet, untrusted sources, weird software. And so they can do all this from Tails, knowing that if there is a virus in these documents, it won't spill on their Windows, or it won't infect their other operating systems. You know? So it creates some kind of safe bubble where you can work on sensitive documents or untrusted documents. And of course, we don't design Tails to be used all the time by everybody. It's really just when you need special powers. So of course, people are going to continue using Windows, using their Mac OS, but whenever you need special care, whenever you need to create this safe environment, you can switch to Tails easily and, I don't know, become a superhero if you want. Any questions or comments on these use cases? Will it work on a Chromebook? If I understand correctly, Chromebooks, they usually have ARM processors, and so that wouldn't work. Will Tails virus check files and applications also? So in Tails, we don't have an antivirus, but what we do have, we have several applications that allow you to convert untrusted documents into documents that you can open and trust and share and more widely. So we have tools to remove malware and to remove metadata, for example, from pictures. We don't have an antivirus per se, but we have tools to convert documents into trusted and safe documents. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, it's the end of my presentation. So I don't know, we still have a couple of minutes. We could continue discussing how could Tails be useful in your work. I think that would be very interesting for me. So as I mentioned at the beginning, my work at Tails is, I'm a UX designer, so I work on usability, and it's part of my work to understand the need of people, users like you. And so that's also why I came here today, to understand maybe how can Tails be useful to you. You already share a bunch of information about that, but what could be the limitations, what we could work on for Tails to be more useful to you in the future. So all this information and this dialogue is interesting to me.
I thank you very much, Sajolida. I'd also like to add that we have support channels available, and we have a team that responds to queries. Any query you might have about Tails, there's these support channels. Maybe the first three might not be your preferred choices. Perhaps the Signal number would be the preferred choice.
Great. I dropped it in chat, but for those that have not used Tails before or tools like it, can you talk a little bit more about persistent storage and how that's different from the default installation?
Yes. Let me see. I will try to switch to demo, because now that I have a Tails running. Okay. Ooh. So as I said, by default in Tails, everything disappears when you shut down. But you can decide, it's opt-in, it's you who decide what you want to save to this persistent storage. So in the demo, hopefully you can see, there is, so this is Tails, looks like a desktop, it's based on Linux. So we have here the application menu, and in the application menu, there is an application that is called persistent storage. Very slow computer. And so the persistent storage is protected by a passphrase that you choose when you create it. And then I think it will become more clear when you see the list of options of things you can decide to save to the persistent storage. You will understand better how it works. Now it's initializing the encryption. This is only once. It's because I'm starting it for the first time. By default, there is no persistent storage in Tails, but you can decide to create one, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm creating the encrypted storage. And that's all the options of things you can decide to save in your persistent storage. So by default, there is a folder where you can save your files and documents, but you can also decide to save the network connections. So that means the Wi-Fi passwords. If you're always connecting to the same network, you want to save this information inside Tails. Otherwise, it's going to be disappearing when you shut down Tails. If you configure printers, you can decide to save the configuration of your printers to the persistent storage. We have options for the bookmarks of Tor browser. That's another one that's very useful. If you use the Thunderbird email client, you can also decide to save everything related to Thunderbird in the persistent storage and things like that. And so now, I don't think I will have time to do that, but if you restart Tails, you will be asked for the password of this persistent storage when you start, so that it unlocks, and then you get access to all this data. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. The last time that I had configured Tails myself, you had to do a lot more to configure persistent storage intentionally, so it's a lot more streamlined.
Yes. So that's the new persistent storage. I think we released it 1 or 2 years ago. Something else that we've worked a lot on recently is the process to connect to the Tor network. We try to make this easier as well. So now we have, maybe it's going to be too much demo and start to fail. But we also have a new assistant to connect to Tor. So here I just connected to the Wi-Fi, and now there is a window that appears, and that's telling me how I want to connect to the Tor network. Here there is an option that might be useful for domestic violence survivors. There is an option to hide to my local network that I'm connecting to Tor, so that, for example, if you have a parental control device on the network, you could escape the device to detect that you are connecting to Tor. That would be using bridges, Tor bridges. I think it would be too big of a chapter to open right now, but there are options when you connect to the Tor network to hide the fact that you are connecting to the Tor network. But if you don't care, you can also connect automatically. It's going to be simpler. But this is something else that we've worked on recently that we improved in the past years. I don't know if you knew this tool already, Chris and Tony.
Oh, I hadn't seen that. I'm sure that those on the team that configure the devices have, but that's really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing a small review of the things that we've improved in the past years. Yeah. Any other questions or things you want to see? Otherwise, I think we're done. Oh, I didn't put that on my slides. You can write me emails. Oh, thanks, Raja. That's my email address. I'm always interested in hearing stories of people who try to use Tails, whether it was successful or not successful. Both things are very interesting to me, learning about your experiences. If you end up using Tails for your work and it's useful, I'm also interested in hearing your stories. Stories are always interesting for me as a UX designer, but also to share online to show what's possible and to, I don't know, inspire people to use our tools. So yeah, don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Raja shared a bunch of support channels. And for anything else related to Tails, you can talk to me directly.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. That was extremely interesting. It's good to see all the positive changes that have been happening with the project since the last time I touched it. I think that a lot of people, whether they're in the tech space or the advocacy space or wherever they live, can get a lot out of the tool, and knowing when to use it and how to use it really helps out a lot. So thank you both for your time and attending.
You're welcome. Thanks for your interest and your time.
Thank you very much for welcoming us.
All right.
Bye.
Goodbye.